Hello everyone, I'm Jenny with GoBox Art Crate. Today I'm going to take us through a fun holiday project. We're going to be working on the Snowman, which comes as a kit of two. You get both the Snowman and the Santa Claus. I will do the Santa Claus next in a following video, so you can follow along with both if you want. These are sold as a kit. It's available on our website, gobox.com, and it comes with all the paint you need in here and some other fun stuff, coaster, sticker. You can add brushes if you want. This $10 pack we've been using for years, and in all my years of painting, which is over 25 years, I have found that this, for the value, is a really good brush set. They're Princeton brushes, $10 for the set of 4, and you can do just about any painting with them. So that's the kit I'm going to use for this. If you have your own brushes, really what you'll want is these two will be your core brushes that we will use. This is about a 1/4 inch wide flat brush, and then this is a little round number 2 detail brush. And then I like to use this 3/4 inch wide flat brush. You can use a 1 inch wide one too, but that'll get like some of these big pieces filled in. So let's go ahead and move this out of the way, and let's talk about this project. All right, let me just do some adjusting here. I want to make sure that's still visible. Great. Okay, so I've got my plain wood snowman there, and it's nice to have all this stuff cut out for us so we know exactly where to paint on the carrot and all that. Colors, we are using the primary colors, black and white, and this metallic silver. So this is phthalo blue, bright red, yellow, black, and white. And then this silver, for whatever reason, it's a great silver paint, but it's very liquid. So compared to the other colors, it's super thin. It's going to come out of that bottle real fast. Probably surprise you a little bit. But for these little curlicues that we do, having it really fluid is actually very helpful. It'll just be a little bit frustrating the first time you open it and you're like, oh, wait, what's this? So I apologize for that. Great paint, though. All right, let's move this aside. So you will want, in your supplies, you'll want to have a paper towel or a paint rag and just a cup of paint water to wash your brushes with. Try and make sure everything's in the picture here. And I say let's go ahead and get started on the white here, because if we start with the light color, then we're not likely to pollute the black into the white as much. Or at least that's the plan here. So let's pick up, just thinking here, let's get a base coat going. Let's pick up a large brush. You could use this one too. I was just trying to decide which one I wanted to use. I'll just go with this big one to get the base coat on. Go ahead and dip it in your water cup and just brush it really gently back and forth. Just wake up those bristles, especially if it's a brand new pack. There is some kind of something they put on the brushes that makes them pretty stiff at first, and it'll just rinse right off. Then just dry it off really good to make sure this little metal part doesn't have any rogue drops of water on it. And dip it in your white paint. You don't need much. I gave myself way more white paint than I will use in this project. That was accidental, so I'll probably just use it again for the next project. I'm just gonna come along here. We will paint into that little groove with some white, but we want to use a smaller brush for that. Now you can, if you want, you could paint on the sides, but you can see it doesn't grab the paint as easily as the front because the sides are a little more rough, but it'll just require a little bit more paint and you can have it painted on all sides. The thing I like about these is, well, first of all, it's a woman-owned business, small business, and the quality is great, but she also makes them so they freestand. So you can put them on a shelf and just, you don't have to put a hook on them or some kind of something to make them stable. They're just gonna stand right up. If you've never painted on wood before, now this is some kind of MDF product. It is so cool. Compared to canvas, it's a fun little break from canvas because of how smooth this is. I don't know, for me, I just love the feel of that. I love how painting on smooth wood feels compared to canvas, which has a rough texture and gives you other things that are nice. But once in a while, it's pretty cool to paint on wood. I'm just going to kind of smooth out my brush strokes. I will do a second coat of white on here. If you haven't done a lot of acrylic painting, I'm going to give you a tip that will help you forever. When you're doing more than one coat, acrylic paint doesn't like to stick to itself when it's wet. So if I went to put a second coat on right away, right now, the second coat wouldn't stick. In fact, it would just push around this first coat, and it can be really frustrating. So if you give it like 5 minutes, or even less with the wood, you can probably give it less than 5 minutes, you'll be much happier, and that second coat will adhere. So I'm just going to wash the brush, dry it off, set it aside. And I'm going to pick up one of my smaller brushes to get into these grooves. So I do paint all along here, and then around the carrot. That could be done like in black if you wanted it to look like it had a black outline, but I just decided to do it in plain white. So I'm going to pick up, this is my number 4 brush. It's little, it's about 1/8 of an inch wide. You can dip it in water, you probably don't have to. That's just a habit I got into, but yeah, it does make the brush, the bristles a little more flexible. So I'll dip that in white, you don't need much. Don't worry if you overlap into the hat, that's going to get completely coated in black, so this white will just be a past memory. Yeah, just get a good coat of paint in there. I like to use the thin edge, obviously it's going to fit a lot better in this little groove. And don't worry if you overlap into your carrot either, because that's going to get orange with some shading. There we go. If you feel like you need to get a little more paint in there, go ahead. You can have a look, you can turn it. Oh yeah, I missed some spots here. And the top looks pretty good. Now this is already dry enough to start putting a second coat on. That is the beauty, well, one of the beauties of painting on wood. It does dry uber fast. I'm gonna wash this brush. I'm gonna go back to my big brush just to get the main coat out of the way. So I'll take that. Probably didn't even need to wash this brush, it was so quick. What was that, maybe 1.5 minutes? I don't know. Now, if yours has a thicker coat of paint and maybe it's not as dry as mine is yet, just wait a few minutes. One thing I do too, I got in the habit of keeping an old hairdryer close by me in my little art studio here. Because there are times that my patience wears out and I'm like, I don't have 10 minutes to wait. I'm in the zone now. I need this to dry before my inspiration wears out. There. Okay. Awesome. We are going to do some blue shading in here. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I like to shade snow on different paintings I do in pale blue because it kind of just gives it an icy look, and compared to other colors you could shade it in, I think the blue is pretty good. But before we go too far, we're going to put blush on our snowman, because what would he be without those cute blush spots? And it gives us an opportunity to use our red, which again, I probably put way too much paint on here. Definitely the silver because it poured out really fast. But you could paint the other side. I guess your carrot, you'd have to draw it on, but you could have a two-sided snowman. You could have like the Krampus type version and the Happy Christmas Santa type version. I'm just saying that because I just watched the Krampus movie. It was kind of funny. Okay, back to this. Okay, so let's get some blush going on here. And I'm going to use my number 8 brush. You can dip it in the water, dry it off really good. I just fold my paper towel over the top and pull it through like that. And I'm just going to make a really pale pink. So you want to use the corner of your brush, pick up just the tiniest little nick of red, and let's stir it in some of this white over here. Look at that. It's so pretty. That's about the right color I want. This is still wet and I actually want it to be. And I'm just going to dab this into a little circle. I can tell right away I need actually more red. Usually I overdo it. And I just really lightly go around the edges so that it just sort of hazes out. And you can always go back and make it a little more red in the center just by dabbing that brush on there and dabbing it around in a circle. And it just slowly kind of fades out. This one over here it's just a tiny peekaboo bit. Now the cool thing is if you ended up getting this a little too hardcore red, like you can see the difference. That one's really pale. This is darker, and it's probably because the white over here has dried a bit more than that. You can clean your brush off, use some white, and just starting around, I like to start on the outside edges and work inward. You can just lighten that up, smooth it out. As soon as your brush starts to drag on here, that's how you know your paint's getting tacky and drying a bit. Nice. Okay, we're gonna let that dry and work on the hat. We'll add some more bluish white in here, so any spots that you have that you can still kind of see through will likely get covered up with the third coat we put on. So setting this brush aside, and I am going to move this over just a bit. I'm going to pick up the big guy again. This is a good one for painting the hat. Now, I didn't worry about leaving this part blank. I just covered from the top of the head up solid black just to make it easy. And you can go ahead and do that anytime. It doesn't really matter where you start. I try to remember to start at the top because then as I work down here, this has dried and I'm less likely to smear black into white paint. I doubt we'll need a second coat of black on here. It seems to go on really opaque. One thing that will be helpful is if you notice I keep my brush strokes kind of long. I'm not doing a lot of all over like this kind of thing. Certain paintings, like if you're doing a sky, that technique works great. But for something like this, I just want to kind of smooth it out. And down here, you can just use the thin edge of your brush and go right through that groove. But down here, you may end up switching to one of your smaller brushes to get around the face if you feel like you need a little more control around here. Every little nook and cranny. I just utilize the thin edge of this brush to get along here. Sometimes it's also helpful to turn your project. You're not always just locked into having it upright. I do find I'm able to control things a little better when I'm pulling towards myself rather than brushing away. So this feels more comfortable to me. And if you feel like you need to get some more paint on up here, you can do that, but it looks pretty opaque. I see a couple thin spots up in here, and it's drying so fast that I'm able to get a second coat on without waiting. Hopefully you guys are all enjoying the holiday season. This is one of the last days of November here, like it's different anywhere else. And I'm just getting ready for Christmas. We've got our house all decorated. A hair stuck in my watch band. It's tickling me. Yeah, so we are fully embracing the holiday season for sure. I love doing, this is when I'm most inspired to paint, is during the holidays. I love doing little gnomes and feeling like a little elf doing wooden projects. It's pretty fun. Okay, I'm going to check this out. There's a couple spots that look kind of thin to me, but I think it's just that they've dried, and so in the light, the wet parts are shiny, and these corners are kind of more matte, but it looks like the paint is on there fully. And I got a little black speck down here. Sometimes that happens. Just clean that up with another brush. Looks like I got one on here too. It's inevitable. Okay, now I feel like it's a good time to start shading some of our blue in there. And you want to keep it really pale. It's kind of one of those things like the red where if it goes on too strong, you can always glaze over it with some white and soften it up. That works really good. I think first I'm gonna, let's see here. I'm gonna get some fresh white around some of the edges here. I don't want to overlap into my blush spot too much. Just as this dries, and you'll find this with this type of paint, as it dries, the coating of paint becomes a little more transparent than when it's wet. So sometimes you might go back and be like, oh, I thought I had this done. And realize, oh, okay, I guess I need to put a little more paint on there. Having the wet paint on for this next step we do is nice, though. Just being careful around my little blush spots here. I don't want to make the edges too sharp. I want them to fade out like the way they do. So I'm not putting a lot of paint around them and just sort of lightly brushing it around. And now let's get some blue on here. So right out of the tube, the phthalo blue is really dark. And so we definitely want to have a lot of white. I'll just scrape off a bit of white and plop it down. You don't need a ton of paint here. Use the corner of your brush to pick up a little blue. I don't think I picked up any. And you can see right away it gets in there. So we're talking like baby blue here. That's about right. Maybe a tiny bit more blue. But yeah, pretty sky blue, baby blue. For this next step, we don't want a lot of paint on our brush. And you can see that mixing up paint, I've got big globs of paint. So a lot of times I'll just scrape it off on my palette just so I can use that paint. You can also wipe it on your paper towel or rag. So you just have a little on here. I like to start on the edges and pull inward, letting my brush run out of paint. So that's why you want less paint. You want it to just run out of paint after you get like maybe a 1/4 inch in from the edges here. And let me show you what you can do. So I'll work in segments. I'll get a little segment done like this. You can see the fade on this one is a little bit smoother. And this I definitely have, oops, that's too much. I definitely have a sharper border where I've shaded in. So what I'll do working in segments is wipe my brush or wash it off. I just do a quick rinse. It doesn't have to get all the color off. And then I'll pick up just a little white and working at the edge of where the blue is, just sort of glaze over the edge of the blue and bring it into the blue a bit. And then you've got a nice fade where it's shaded rather than just a blue line. And if you lose more of your blue than you want, you can just go back and add some more blue. A lot of times I'll just flip-flop between the white and the blue without even washing my brush because they are mixing right on the project. It's a pretty easy technique as long as you use very little paint because we're just shading. We've already got our coats of paint on here. We're just shading, which requires very little. So now I think I'm going to go across the bottom edge of the hat, again picking up very little blue paint. Pulling downward, letting the brush run out. Working in segments. So now I'll dip my brush, even though I didn't wash it, but I got most of the blue off. Dip it in white and just glaze over the edge of the blue and kind of bring it down into the white a little more. It's kind of satisfying. I do have to say I love doing shading, unless I'm in a hurry. But most of the time I really do like shading once you get the hang of it. So I've run out of blue, dip the brush in a little white, come along the edge of the blue and white together. Cool. I was just thinking about, I was talking about the backside of this and kind of laughing about how you could do a like evil snowman, like Krampus style. But what you could do that would be really fun is you could totally make it into Jack Skellington. So if you're a Nightmare Before Christmas fan, you could easily do that. The face is so easy to paint. You can even add blush. Why not? Then you've got a Halloween decoration, and you flip it over a couple months later, you've got your Christmas decoration. Why not? You've got all the colors you need. Okay, so I'm going to shade under the nose now. Again, always using a small amount of paint. Just come right as this starts curving downward. Now that needs to blend in, so I'm going to wipe my brush off, go for a little white. You have to work quick because you want that blue to still be wet when you're glazing the edges. Well, it doesn't have to be 100%, but it is easier if it's still a little bit wet. Just blending the wet colors together is a little easier. Now I'm just going to go back and kind of reshade any areas that I feel like could use a little more paint. Maybe add a little more white through here where the eyes are going to go, so I'll brush it in, just a small amount of paint. Come up into the blue just a bit. I don't want to eliminate the shading, but I could see I needed a little more white paint here because I could see some of my brush strokes through it, which is not a big deal, but I like to, for this sort of thing, I like to not have a ton of brush strokes. It's just my personal preference. Certain projects I love to have lots of brush strokes showing. But these little wood decorations, I tend to like to have it pretty smooth. So again, just touching up any areas that I feel like I could touch up. Don't want to overdo it. That's easy to do. But yeah, I feel like right now the shading is about where I want it to be. It's real close to the way this one is. Checking my black. It's got a nice even coat. I'm going to wash the brush. We'll let this dry a bit and work on the ribbon part of the hat. And then we will go back and paint the carrot nose and do some other stuff on the face. Now on the decoration, you can see I am a swirly girl. I love lots of swirls. I feel like they add a fun touch to this. Not everyone is comfortable with them though. Now this was just my choice for this decoration. You can do anything you want. You could do like vertical stripes. You could do little polka dots all over by just using the handle of one of your brushes and dip it in paint and put polka dots all over. You can try out the swirls, and if it's a little frustrating for you, I would say just paint the black over them. Let them dry first and paint the black over them. And try again or do a completely different decoration. Google snowman hats. I'm sure you can find lots of different decorations you can do. But I went with, because the bottom of this is it's pretty much plain, you know, it's just white with some blue shading and the carrot nose and stuff. I went really elaborate and kind of Mad Hatter style on the hat. So if you want to follow along with me and do that, that's what I'm going to teach you. I did green and pink. You can do any color you want for the ribbon there. You could do light blue. I'm trying to think here. You can do a darker pink. You can make purple by mixing the dark blue and red. Those two together make a really nice purple, especially if you use a little more blue than red. And you can even add a dot of white to it for opacity, or even make it completely lavender by adding more white. I will do mine the way the original is so that you can do it that way if that's what you want to do. And I'm going to use my number 8 brush. So this green is more yellow than blue. So it's probably like 2 parts yellow. Just scrapes on the side. I don't think we really use yellow anywhere else. And then just scrape off a little blue. You can see right away it starts turning. Right away it's going to turn really green. So that's why I use way less blue, because you can get teal really easily. And if you want teal, that's what you'll do. More blue than yellow. I'm going for, it's kind of a avocado green, I guess. And nice, we've got this border to follow along, so you can just do maybe 1 brush width across there just to get started. If you paint down into the groove like I just did, it's not a big deal. It's pretty easy to touch up with black in your tiny brush later on. Or you can just bring the green down in the groove, but then you'll probably have to touch up this part. So I'm gonna make this little banner across here, or ribbon. It's probably about 2 brush widths, and it will need a second coat because this first one's gonna be really thin and you'll be able to see right through it. Getting the straight line across here is probably the hardest part, especially if you've had any coffee. I just drank a 16-ounce latte. Oh, wow, I shouldn't have done that. No, you can use the thin edge of your brush, or even the thin edge of one of your smaller brushes, like your number 4, and just go across here and get it as straight as you can. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It can even be slightly rounded. Yeah, and I'm just going to let this dry. I did get quite a lot of green down in the groove there, but like I said, I'll touch it up with black later, or you can even just leave it, because when this is standing up, like, unless someone's like really looking under, you won't be able to, you're the only one who will know it's there. And if you're the type that it's going to bother you knowing it's there, then you'll touch it up. I am that type. Okay, let's let that dry. Let it dry a bit. Wash the brush. And let's talk carrots. So the carrot orange is easy to mix. It's just yellow and red, but I like the green. It's way more yellow than red. That red will overpower the yellow so fast. And it's you can get a coral color really easy with these two. So if you want a coral carrot, why not? I mean, there's all different colors of carrots. You can have a purple carrot. I've seen that. I've made those before. You can buy them, I think, at Costco. Little pack of colorful carrots. How fun. One of my friends made purple mashed potatoes for Christmas. I saw it in a photo she had posted on Facebook, and I gotta tell you, they didn't look very appetizing. It's just because the purple in those purple potatoes, when you make them into mashed potatoes, it kind of turns sort of gray. So it's not the prettiest. But anyway, I'm off topic. Let's go ahead and mix up orange. I'm gonna take my number 4 brush and scrape off yellow. I was wrong, we do use the yellow again. Remember I said I thought we didn't use it anymore, but I completely forgot. Okay, so let's mix a little red, just a little. You'll see it's turning orange right away. And I am at home, and my dog is, I hear him whining, one of my dogs. He wants to go out. He's even scratching on the back door. So while you guys mix that up, I'm gonna be 2 seconds. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more than 2 seconds. Okay, I'm back. I could tell by the way he was acting, I think he saw a squirrel. Luckily, they're always super fast and they just kind of climb up in the tree and laugh at him. Okay, yeah, this is a good carrot orange. Now you could just continually add little bits of red if you feel like you want it even darker. We do some shading on the nose, so it will turn slightly darker and more muted anyways. Now this coat is going to be very transparent at first. And again, I've got little bits of color down in there. I'll just touch that up with my tiny brush on white later on. Kind of hard to avoid those grooves, honestly. Especially if you've had coffee. Okay, yeah, no, that's very, you can see the brown wood through it. That's okay, but we do want to have it be a little more opaque, so I'm going to wash the brush and move somewhere else. I'm going to move back to here. This is, well, actually that's, I feel like it could dry a couple more minutes. So that's what I'm going to do. And right now I'll paint the eyes because we're done with the coating of the face and we can paint the eyes on. I just have little black circles, and remember when you put a snowman together, you're usually picking up stones and using those for the rocks on the mouth and the eyes. So they don't have to be perfectly round. They don't have to be the same size. It's just going to kind of give that whole, you know, homemade snowman look. I do want to use my smallest brush, so dip it in the water. The reason I want to dip this one in the water and dry it off is because I can pinch the bristles together to a little point, which is helpful when you're doing any kind of line work. Now go ahead and, or detail work, dip it in the black. I just picked up a tiny bit at first. And what I like to do is place the eyes first. So at first, they're just gonna be little tiny dots. Oh my gosh, it's kind of cute that way. Okay, I like the distance there. I just kind of place them just the inside edge of the blush there. And it can even go over the blush. I think this one's going to end up going over the blush. I'm going to circle around it. That looks so funny. I promise I'm not leaving it that way. I'm going to color it in. That snowman he's seen some things. Or he's wearing glasses. Oh my gosh, my hand is so shaky. That coffee is hitting. Okay, so I hear my dog wanting back in. He's wishy-washy like that. So you finish your circles. I'll be back in 2 shakes of the paintbrush. All right, back again. So hopefully you got your eyes painted in. And you can kind of work from the inside and round them out a bit. Now you can do big eyes, you can do small eyes, you can do medium eyes, whatever you want to do. Now for these dots across the mouth, you can use the tip of the bristles, or if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, you can use the handle of your little brush and just dip it in black and then just stamp little dots. Now after about the 3rd one, you'll want to redip it. Let's see, do I need one more? Yes, he's kind of got a side smile. That would be really cute, actually. Kind of reminds me of the Snowman at Night book. They sort of look like this. I love that book. Oh my gosh, my kids are all grown up now, but we read that book and the second one so many times. Good times. I miss those times when they're so young and they like to lay down next to you while you read a picture book. Oh, nostalgia. Okay, cool. So got the mouth and eyes down. He's starting to look like a snowman. By this time, this is dry enough. I can go back and paint a second coat. So I'm going to go back to my number 8 brush. And look at that, it's so nice. The second coat makes such a difference, for sure. Again, you can use the thin edge of your brush and go across the top just to get a little bit nicer line. That's why I like using flat brushes, because you can utilize them using the flat side to get a nice wide stroke like I am now. And then you can turn it and you've got this little razor thin edge. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now for the decorations on this bow, we'll do them later because this obviously needs to dry. But you can always do like a little holly cluster. You can mix a darker green by adding some more blue into this. And I'll show you how to draw little holly leaves. A lot of people like to do that. I noticed when we had our studio and we do snowman canvas paintings, a lot of people would do, instead of a ribbon, they do, or instead of some kind of bow or something, they would do a holly cluster. It's so easy to do. Once you get the hang of the drawing the leaves is probably the part that will hurt your brain a little bit, but I'll show you how to do it if you want to do that. Right now I want to go and get a second coat of orange on the nose. Probably, because this is such a small space, I think my number 4 is the way to go. Oh, my orange is really drying up here. I might have just enough. And again, like this ribbon here, adding this second coat is such a game changer. So satisfying. Okay, looking pretty good. I've got a little glare, so I'm having to tilt this. Hopefully it's not too glary for you guys. Try to adjust my lighting in here so that it's not super glaring. All right. Let's talk swirls. I think that's what we're going to be doing next. Again, completely optional. Having the really thin silver paint works great for this, like I said before. All of these swirls just sort of come off of each other and go different directions. They're not all great. Like I've got some in here and I'm like, what is that? It's funny looking. But it all works together. And look at the silver when I tilt it around in the light. It's just so cool. But again, keep your black paint handy. You can always touch things up. Now, if you want to touch something up, if you do a silver swirl and it just doesn't end up okay, let it dry, because you'll get just a metallic charcoal paint on your hat, because the two colors, the wet black and wet silver, will mix together. But let's pick up our smallest brush. I'm gonna, again, it's still damp, so I'm gonna just pinch the tip of the bristles together to a little point and just dip your brush in just the tip of the bristles. You don't need much paint. Maybe I need a little more than that. Just a little bit. And let's start way down here in the corner. Now, I tend to rest my hand when I'm working, and I tend to rest it on my project. Right now I can see these dots are still wet, so I would definitely smear every single one of them. So I'm just gonna sort of float my hand above here and just do a little curly Q. It takes some practice. If you've got a sheet of paper, I highly recommend you practice on it a little bit. Some people can do it right away, even if they've never painted before, but I will say most people I've watched doing it for the first time will struggle a bit with mainly flat, kind of flat swirls. But I'll tell you the main thing I see, I'll do it on my palette just to show you, because I want you to avoid this. Once you know to avoid it, it's real easy to. What I see a lot of times is people don't curl in far enough. So they'll do that. And what you want to do is you want that really tight curl, so just keep going. So you see the difference? That versus that. Big difference. So yeah, that was something I would see a lot with the newer students and just people who haven't done a lot of swirl painting. Okay, back to this. So I've got one on here, and now I'm just going to kind of curl off of that one. And this one I'll go back that original direction. So it's almost like a vine of silver swirls that goes all the way across here. In fact, if I hold this vertically, you can see, yeah, it's like a vine. And they don't have to be all the same size. You can tuck some small ones in there. I especially did that up here. Like here's a really tiny one tucked up against a larger one. You will get the hang of it. It just takes some practice. So don't beat yourself up if you're having trouble. Nobody expects you to come right out of the gate as a swirl expert. A lot of times that first painting you're doing is getting used to the feel of the brush in your hand. Like if you've used pen and pencil a lot, even if you're not drawing, if you're just writing, the feel of the brush in your hand and how much pressure to put down, that's the hardest thing to get used to. And once you get over that, which doesn't take very long, you just do a few paintings, then such a huge part of painting is out of the way. Your confidence will go up because you're familiar with the brush. I always compare it to learning to eat with chopsticks versus eating with a fork. So maybe you've been eating with a fork your whole life, and the first time you start with chopsticks, they feel completely different in your hand. And getting the technique down takes some time, but you can become a pro at it for sure. Tiny little swirl in here. Okay, so I feel like that looks pretty good. I've got a couple spots in there that maybe I'll go back and touch up. Again, these are optional. If you really did not enjoy that, don't do them. Do something different. Do polka dots, like using the handle of the brush like I showed you, or just draw big circles and fill them in. You can do all kinds of things and then just keep covering it up until you find something that you really like. All right, let's see how that is. That's dry. Well, while I've got the silver in hand, instead of going immediately to this, let's take a quick break from swirls and let's highlight our eyes and mouth. The highlights are done in silver, and you'll use the brush end. And in the upper left corner of each eye, I just put a little dot, pretty small. And I like to do a secondary highlight in the eye, so just opposite that. So lower right corner of each eye, I'll do a tiny dot. So our light source is probably over here somewhere. It's just glancing off the eyes. And then so when you do if you have room to highlight the little stones on the mouth, just do the left side of each, a tiny little dot. Some of these are still wet. It's because it was a thicker blob of paint. So I'll hold that up a little bit. You can kind of see, especially as I tilt it. So cute. I would love to see your guys' projects when you're done with them. So if you haven't, we have a wonderful Facebook group. Now, it's not our Facebook business page. Our business page is just called GoBox. Our group page is called GoBox Art Crate. So it's the whole sentence. And it's one of those where I think you ask permission to join. And people on there are so supportive. Students have been posting their artwork for a long time. It's been fun to see how much they've improved or how creative they're getting. So I highly recommend you join it, and you can post your own art anytime. We love to see it. Yeah, the other students love to see it too. Or if you just want to lurk and look at everybody else's, that's totally fine too, until you feel confident enough to post your own. Okay, now let's go back to the hat and swirls. Now, one thing I probably didn't mention, I don't know if I had, you want to keep your pressure really light. And maybe you figured that out already. As you, if you work by pushing down really hard, your lines are going to be really thick. So look, if I push hard, maybe I'll use a different color to show you. I'll use black, that seems to show up really good. If I push hard, look at that. That's a grand swirl. Now, if I do the opposite and use really light pressure, I get a nice thin one. And then doing the light pressure at first, right out of the chute, it takes something to get used to. It takes a bit to get used to, and you will. You will get used to it. So again, very little paint on the tip of the bristles. Come in here, make a swirl. You gotta just start with one. Gotta start somewhere. And I'm just going to sort of grow off of the hose, filling the little gaps of the hat. Sometimes I spin different directions with these, and sometimes they go the same direction. They're just very whimsical. Hi, Hottie. I hear your stomach's making noise. I think the dog's been eating grass. And again, you can make these different sizes. Sometimes I'll force myself to do a tiny one because it's really easy to just make them all the same size because, oh, hey, that's what I learned. I started with one size, I'm going to stick with it. No, you can tuck in some tiny ones if you feel comfortable with that. And because my hat is dry, I can rest my pinky over here. So I take advantage of that because it's a little easier to do the thinner or less pressure brush strokes if you've got your hand balanced. You can also turn your project anytime if that helps. For the Santa, we do this all throughout the beard. So you'll want to get your practice in, I guess. And the beard on the Santa, I opted to do it that way, but at first I didn't. I did it one way. I did it so it looked more like hair, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to make these sort of match. So you can do the Santa without the swirls if you really hate them. And he'll be just as cute. So I'm redipping my brush pretty often. You maybe have noticed that every time I do a swirl, I go back and redip the brush, and most of the time. Part of that is because having the fresh bit of paint on there is helpful for getting a whole swirl done. So if your brush runs out of paint mid-swirl, it's a little, I don't know, it's a little irritating, I guess, because you have to go back and retrace it. I feel like I want a little one in between here. Let's see. There, I broke that up. I could even tuck one down here, but I think I'm gonna just keep going. Okay, cool. I think I've got enough there. I do see one or two where my brush kind of ran out of paint, like I talked about. I just need to go back and touch them up. There we go. Ooh, so fun. Metallic paint you can buy in all kinds of different colors. I was actually just at an art store today and I saw some that was kind of a peacock greenish blue. And I bought it. I can't wait to try it out. I had to have it. It's one of my favorite colors. I just didn't know they made it in metallic. I didn't think about it ever. Okay. Well, get those finished up. You can always pause the video and catch up and then come back. Take your time though. You don't have to speed paint by any means. That's the nice thing. You can always pause that video. It's fun to see the differences, like on the face. These eyes were a little bit bigger. Could totally do eyelashes. Why not? And the swirls are always a little bit different. I am going to put one more coat of orange on the nose. It's totally not necessary, but I've got a lot of paint left and I feel like one more coat would just do it. So I'm gonna take my number 4. Again, my orange has dried. We do need fresh orange for some of the shading we do. We actually add some black to it. So you will need to make more orange anyways. So if you want to join me and do a third coat of paint on that orange on the nose, by all means, join us. Come to the dark side. Paint always dries a little bit darker, so this is going on fairly light, but I think it will probably dry to be this original color, because on my palette it looks to be the same color. It's kind of funny the way that works. If you've ever painted one of the walls in your house, you're like, oh, it's one color, then a half hour later, wait, it's a different color. That is why I recommend you buy paint samples if you have not done that. For so long, I would just pick out, oh, I like that color. Here's the color chip, mix it up. And then you get it on your wall and you realize yellow on 4 walls in the kitchen is not always the greatest idea, because those colors reflect off each other in a way that maybe isn't super great. But also it dries just different on a wall. Different on a wall than the paint sample, obviously. I got a little orange onto my snowman mouth down here. I'm using my damp brush to try and clean that up, but I think based on how it's smearing around, I think I'm gonna have to touch it up with some white maybe. Yeah, just a little. It's hardly noticeable at all. Okay, so looking at the 2, if you made your eyes small and you want them bigger, that's so easy to do. Just outline, re-outline, pretend you're just outlining the eye in black, and that will add an extra ring around the edges to make it even a little bit bigger. I don't feel like it's making such a huge difference, so I'm just gonna leave them as they are. Let's do a third coat of green here. We've got time. Let's do it. If you want. If you have yellow. I barely have any. So I'm just gonna do a little. Drag this paint out as far as I can take it before I run out completely. Now smooth your brush strokes out. If you kind of stop and start in the middle, you'll have little marks that will show. Okay. We're getting close. We don't have much left to do. Just pretty much decorating the hat and some touch-up work and shading the carrot nose and adding the little lines. Let's do that now. Brush-wise, let's use our smallest brush. And I actually make a brown color it's not black, obviously, you can probably see it's kind of a brownish color. It's like a brownish orange. And the way I get that is I mix just a tiny dot of black in here. Now you can see how that tiny dot really overpowered it pretty quick. So start with the tiniest little dots of black until you start getting kind of a brownish color. It's not the most gorgeous color in the book, but it's only used for shading. So you see how I mixed up half? So I kept some wet orange paint so that if needed I can touch up. This is not a pretty color. Is that the right color? I feel like I need a little more black in it. Yeah, this is helping. You can even add a tiny more red. Oh, that's prettier. Yeah, add a bit more red and you'll get a nicer, warmer brown. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna wipe my brush off. I'm gonna redip the tip of the bristles. And I will start, see, I turned my project. I'm gonna start right out here on the tip. Actually, let's start in the middle. Sorry, I'm just making decisions on the fly. And I'm sort of using the side of my brush. And remember how when we shaded the face, we kind of brought it inward a bit? So as my brush is running out of paint, I'm pulling what tiny little bit of wet paint is left over inward. And that gives more of a shaded look. I'm not pushing hard at all. And I kept this wet orange here handy because we will do a little touching up. You'll get probably a little darker outline than you want at first, but we're going to touch that up. And flipping this around for the bottom edge, just come around here, working in small patches. Now the key here is using little paint and just letting your brush run out of paint as you pull that brownish color towards the center. Okay, what are we at? We're at about an hour. That's actually really good. It's about what I planned on for this to take. I have to teach it to a group of teachers next week, and they only have about an hour to work with, so this is perfect. Okay, now you can see the outline's really harsh. It definitely needs to be softened, especially right through here. I'm just going to set this brush in the water so it doesn't dry out. We'll use it again in a minute. I'm going to take my number 4 brush, which is clean and mostly, it's kind of damp dry. Very little paint. You don't need to pick up much at all. Start from the center. Let your brush kind of run out of paint as you're working outward. And just like we did with the white and blue, you're just kind of going to glaze the edges of that shading so that you're softening it, but it's still there. And you can even go back and forth between the two colors. Sometimes adding a drop of water to your shading color is a nice thing to do. Now you want to make sure you dab your brush off before you go touch the project with it, because otherwise it'll have too much water and paint. Yeah, I'm liking that. And then I'll go back to my orange. And while the brown is still wet and the orange is still wet, it works really good to just blend those colors a bit. And this is something you can just keep working on. You can kind of go back and forth between the orange and the brown. And it's a nice way of outlining this carrot without a harsh outline. It's just kind of more of a natural outline. And then after that dries, we'll paint the lines in the carrot. So for now, keep your brown handy. You might need to mix a little more. Just save both the orange and the brown so you can mix more if needed. Washing the brush. Oh, got my other brush. I still got orange on here. Okay, I'm gonna wash that off. Now, stripes on the hat, or polka dots, or the little holly cluster. It's up to you. Let me show you the holly cluster real quick. Some of you might want to do that. I like to give options. Okay, so I want to mix. I've got this green. If you painted this part green and you're gonna do holly leaves, you'll want a darker green. I need more yellow. Let's see. I have it nearby somewhere. I think it's in this box. See, I'm not using any special magical paint. I'm using the same stuff you are. Of course. Ooh, that came out fast. Yeah, the yellow's a little liquidy too. Forgot to mention that. Okay, so you want more blue to yellow, and you can see it turns kind of a teal color. You can adjust as you want. If you want to make a more muted dark green, it's the craziest thing, but adding red will do that. So that's a really pretty kind of sea green. If you add just a dot of red to that, it's crazy. It just tones it down and it makes it more of a muted green, and you can experiment with it. Like, what happens if I add more red? It almost starts turning kind of a purplish color too. So that's an option. I'm just gonna mix those together. Now, the holly leaves are the one thing that, like I said, can hurt your brain a little bit, unless you can get it right away. I'll paint the berries first so we have something to go from. So I always do like a little cluster of 3 berries, and then I could work the leaves out from there. So I'll take my brush. You get out of the way. Make sure this is on camera good. Okay. And I'm going to make kind of a little rounded triangle shape. And then I go back in and scoop out. And then this last one's going to be another rounded triangle that points this way. So there we go. Little rounded triangle. Scoop back in, make kind of I guess it's kind of like a C shape or a U shape, depending on what direction your project is. And back in. And then I do 3. 3 is a nice number. Odd numbers are good with this kind of thing. And then you'll just go in and fill those in, and you might probably need maybe 2 to 3 coats of that paint. Let it dry in between, but that is how you would do a holly thing. On this, I think it would look really good, like right here, maybe here, but I think my preferred place would be right here if I was doing it myself. But for those of us who just want to do the stripes, which are fun and have dots and, you know, very whimsical, they add to this whole whimsical Mad Hatter feel. Let's make pink. So we're gonna mix with our number 8 brush, white and red. It's a little more red than white, so kind of no, I guess it's probably pretty close to equal parts. I think I've got some orange on my brush coming through in there. What happens is the paint hides right up in here where this metal ferrule crimps the bristles. And so when you're mixing, because you're mashing down a bit, you'll see it come out. It's like, wait, where have you been hiding? So here's a nice pink. I could add a little more red to it. I don't want to make it too dark though, because it can get kind of muted. And this is already a muted color. So the tones of the 2 colors, if they're both muted, they can actually, in a weird way, blend together, even though they're completely different colors. It's just that I like having a little bit lighter tone to contrast against that darker green. And I'm just going to use this brush right from the top here, pull down. And then each one is about a brush width. So 1 brush width, skip a brush width, then do another. Super easy. Skip about a brush width, then another. Not pushing hard at all. If you've ever painted your fingernails, this is kind of how that feels, like just a little swipe of the brush. I guess I'm saying because I just did that yesterday. I still had Halloween toenail polish on. I was like, oh, thank God it's not like sandal season. Okay, so this, I've got a little corner here, which I actually, even though it's a little wider than brush width, it's bugging me, so I'm gonna fix that. And we're gonna skip around. This just needs to dry. Finish that up. It's really cute just as it is. I love green and pink together. All right, a few more minutes and we're done. Let's do the carrot. I'm gonna draw a carrot here. I'll draw a carrot in black so you can see it. I'm running out of room on my little drawings. So the carrot goes like this. And you wouldn't do stripes that go all the way down it. So what you do is you do little half stripes, and they're curved. See how it's slightly curved? I matched this curve here. They're just kind of spaced evenly apart. They get shorter down here. And then on this bottom side, you're going to do half stripes that are just in between each of these. So they don't touch ever, but they might come really close together in the middle. And you can see that's exactly what I did here. I did different lengths just to make it more natural looking. That's probably a little too cartoony. I'm going to refresh my brown paint with a little water because I can see it's really drying up, and I'm going to run right out in a minute. And I don't need much. Okay, redip the tip of the bristles. I'll just start back here. I might add just a tiny bit more black to this in red. I think I'm getting down to that kind of mustardy brown I had. Okay, so a little curved line, maybe a shorter one next. My brush is running out of paint right away, so I'm going to mix a little more water with this. There's the top edge. You can even do little dashes here and there, kind of like mixed in like. And if you don't like how that turned out, remix your orange, or if you've still got it, just kind of glaze over it, soften things up, and maybe paint some more of those back on. I went a little extra crazy with my carrot here, so I could, in theory, just to show you what I'm talking about, gotta get all this green out of my brush. I could go in with a little bit of orange, just a little tiny bit, which is all I have left, and I could even just dab it on some of these just to soften the lines. So they're still slightly visible, only not as vivid, and that's kind of nice. Makes it a little more subtle. And then if you need to, when the video's over, I'll show you right now, you can go back in and touch up with white or black, depending on what you need to touch up. Any of these little grooves, if you've accidentally gotten some orange paint, just be real careful and use a tiny, tiny little nick of paint on the tip of the bristles, or you'll be redoing some stuff. Wicked laugh. I've had to redo so many things in my life. It's just part of life with painting, especially if you're picky about your work, which I think most of us are. We want it to look good for sure. Okay, let's decorate our hat and then we are done. This is the easiest thing to do ever. It's just like how we did the mouth. I used the handle end of the brush, and white or any other color. You could use bright red, anything you want. And I did 4 dots. 1, 2, 3, 4. I just kind of started right in the middle there just to show you. 1, 2, 3, 4. And your brush handle's going to run out of paint pretty quick. You can probably get 4 dots before you have to remix it. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. If you're not going to paint the back like Jack Skellington, like I recommend, you can sign the back if you want, put the year. I'm trying to think, if you did Jack Skellington with this little part, I guess you could, because he doesn't have a carrot nose, but you could make it like it looks like part of his black collar that comes out. I don't know. You guys are creative, right? You guys can figure that out. I might have to do one sometime. So there we are. Super fun, super cute, great little addition to the decor. And hope you guys had fun doing it. I absolutely love these. I think they're so cute and unique and fun. But anyway, if you haven't done the Santa yet, I guess I'll see you in the next video. And hope you have happy holidays. Bye.